Well, let's get to it. We are learning new information about that mid-air scare that happened on Friday. The missing piece from an Alaska Airlines jet that blew off at 16,000 feet was recovered.
Yeah, investigators say having the so-called door plug will help determine why it peeled away from the plane shortly after taking off from Portland International Airport, leaving a hole about the size of a refrigerator in the side of the plane. The jet, which was bound for Ontario, California, returned safely to the airport and no one was hurt. The FAA grounded 171 737 MAX 9 planes until they're inspected. Alaska and United Airlines canceled more than 350 flights today due to the grounding. National correspondent Vanessa Mashanya is live in Renton, Washington, outside of one of Boeing's factories where it makes the 737 MAX plane. Vanessa, how can finding that door help investigators learn what exactly happened?
Hey, Chris, good afternoon. This is a big clue that they found, and this door was found in the backyard of a Portland area teacher. The NTSB has only identified him as Bob. They're very grateful for him contacting them because this is a crucial piece of evidence that they are going to use in their investigation as to what exactly went wrong Friday night in the air at 16,000 feet. So just to recap what exactly this is not an emergency exit door. This is a plug-in for, when they make the fuselage, they make it so that there's an option, depending on how many seats you put in the actual plane, you're going to need an appropriate amount of exit doors. So if you fit a lot of seats into that plane, you're going to throw another exit row in there and another exit door. Alaska, United, those airlines do not have the amount of seats that needs all of those exit doors that it's capable to have, so they just plug in that hole, and that is exactly that piece that fell. So, when you look at this door, it is metal, and the NTSB, which got to Portland on Saturday and is really looking over this door right now, it is metal, and metal to them tells a story. They can look at the hinges, they can look at the other parts, and they can see how it was able to be blown off. So again, this is a crucial piece of evidence that they're combing over right now. Here's what the NTSB chair had to say about this piece of evidence.
From the time we got here, we began documenting the scene and looking at how the airframe is situated right now, looking at everything from witness marks and paint transfer on different components to try to begin analyzing what occurred. Our focus right now is on this aircraft to determine what happened, how it happened, and to prevent it from happening again. And once we determine that, we can see if there's a greater concern that we want to issue an urgent safety recommendation for.
So the FAA has grounded 171 MAX jets, and it takes about 4 to 8 hours per plane to make the proper inspection. So that is a long time that those planes are going to be out of commission. As far as the investigation into this specific plane, the NTSB said that a complete investigation could take a year or even longer, Chris.
Yeah, and to think the moment that you step outside your house, his name was Bob that found this door. Just imagine seeing that in your backyard and trying to piece together what happened. So Vanessa, we understand there was another possible safety concern with this flight. What have you learned about that?
Yeah, so this specific plane was actually had some restrictions on where it could fly because a pressurization light kept coming on in the cockpit on 3 different instances. So Alaska made the decision to not fly this plane to Hawaii over a large body of water just so it might have some time to quickly turn around if need be and then make an emergency landing. So this light had gone off in the cockpit once on December 7th and again on January 3rd and January 4th. So, the NTSB wants to make it clear that they haven't made a connection between this light issue and the issue that we all saw play out Friday night with this specific plane. But you could bet, guys, that that's going to be part of the investigation to look into that further.
All right, our Vanessa Mashanya live in Renton, Washington. Vanessa, thanks for that live report.
Now, this is the latest in a string of safety incidents for Boeing 737 MAX. In October of 2018, you may remember a Lion Air MAX 8 crashed in Indonesia. that killed 189 people on board. Months later, an Ethiopian Airlines MAX 8 crashed. That killed 157 people. The FAA grounded the MAX 8 shortly after and formed a team to review its safety. Meanwhile, Boeing fired its CEO at the end of that year. In November of 2020, the FAA lifted its grounding order on that plane. Now, this incident, of course, also hurting the company's bottom line. Boeing's stock ended the day down 20 points. Also of note, Boeing subcontractor Spirit Aerosystems stock, that was down more than 10%. I want to bring in Richard Abulafia, joining me now. He's the managing director at Aerodynamic and has been tracking the airline industry for more than 30 years as an analyst and consultant. Richard, thank you for being here. Vanessa just said that the investigation by the NTSB, it could take as long as a year to figure out exactly what happened. Knowing how these investigations work, how likely is it that they will find the cause?
I think it's a virtual lock on that. I mean, it looks pretty straightforward, even from a relatively short time window. You look at what happened with the two tragedies back with Lion Air and with Ethiopian. It turned out it was a design flaw, and that was pretty clear pretty early into the investigation that mistakes were made. But this looks like a manufacturing defect, an inspection-related problem, something that's relatively easy to rectify.
Now, when it comes to these safety investigations, we've heard the airlines say that each plane is going to go through and they will determine whether or not it's safe to fly. How can we trust that those investigations will be making the plane safe?
Well, the NTSB is one of the most professional organizations in the world when it comes to aviation safety. So they'll be looking at everything. They have the resources needed. They certainly have the experience needed. So I think the system will work just fine. Also, you look at what's going on with these aircraft. It's pretty straightforward. This is, despite the fact that it's a new plane and a new series of aircraft, this fuselage, this character of plane, this architecture of plane has been in production since the 1960s. So we know everything about it. I think they'll get the job done in pretty short order.
Yeah, and I think just one of the big questions that so many people come back to at this point, you talk about it potentially being a design flaw, perhaps straightforward to figure out exactly how it happened. But I mean, the question is, like, how does this happen? How does this plane get past all the safety procedures to get into the air and then suddenly the door flies off?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Unfortunately, you have kind of a recipe for production problems, not design problems, but production problems. We had the worst aviation market downturn in the history of the business thanks to the COVID pandemic, along with, of course, the MAX grounding and the halt to MAX production that took place in 2019, 2020. And now they're trying to ramp back up to record output because everyone wants this jet. And of course, it's Airbus equivalent, the A320. It's been a remarkable comeback. And yet, an awful lot of good people were laid off as a consequence of the COVID pandemic and that downturn. And getting things up and running has proven extremely difficult, especially since some of that experience was lost when some of the older workers retired. So record output starting from a very low position, a workforce that has been slow to get back because, of course, the labor market is so tight. As along with, frankly, cultural issues at Boeing. They've got a serious issue with, the resources needed for aircraft production. All of these are a recipe for potential trouble in terms of production.
And you look at this situation because you have Spirit Aerosystems, which was the subcontractor responsible for the door. You have Boeing, which is the manufacturer now receiving a lot of scrutiny. And then even you have Alaska Airlines, which operates the plane. Where does the blame lie?
Yeah, I guess that's one thing that will be discovered. The entire body of the plane is built by Spirit Aerosystems. Obviously, though, ultimately it isn't Boeing. It's their responsibility, and that's true for contractor management. That's something that will hopefully be uncovered in the investigations and in conversations between the people who build it. From Alaska's standpoint, I don't think there's a whole lot of concern here because it's a brand new plane, as I believe you mentioned earlier, so it's unlikely that maintenance is to blame.
All right, aviation expert Richard Abulafia, thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.